When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hang up. Hang up the phone. I don't know how to fucking hang up the phone. I don't know how to hang up the phone, Steven. Steven, I don't know how to hang up the phone in a car that's not a Tesla. Hang up the phone, car. How do I do this? Hang up the phone. I don't know if the phone is still hung up or it's still, I don't know. It's going to be a great message if it's still going. How do we hang? Fuck, I need to watch the road. I guess I'm just going to, I don't know, until I can.
Steven, I think I got first world problems. Like, that was a voicemail that you guys just heard that I left Steven. I called Steven from my car, my rental car, because I'm in Ohio, of all places. And I was in the rental car. It's a Ford Edge something.
It's not a Tesla? What? It's not a Porsche?
No, it's not.
You're seen driving around and not a Tesla? What is going on?
First off, when I got in the damn car, I had to figure out how to drive the damn thing.
The door didn't open for me.
I'm like, the brakes don't automatically brake? I've got to use 2 pedals? What is this sorcery?
Oh my God.
This is bullshit. And then I was calling Steven, and I guess it has Apple CarPlay, which is still the greatest thing, one of the best things ever in the car. It went to Steven's voicemail, but I'm like, how do I hang up? I don't know what button to hit because it wasn't up on the screen because I had the map up because I was driving. And then that's why there was a voicemail for Steven that sounded like that.
And I never get voicemails from you. Typically, you just hang up and then you'll text me like immediately after if I don't pick up. But the best is when you're traveling, when you do get a rental car, you'll call me right when you get the rental and you'll talk to me until you arrive at your destination. It doesn't fail. I knew I was going to get a phone call the second you were in the car. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, I just want to fill you in on what's going on.
There's usually nothing going on because you're just driving to your destination.
In Ohio. So anyway, I was supposed to do the podcast from home, but I decided to stay an extra day. They guilted me into staying, my friends, on the bowling tour.
Good for you.
And but here's my mindset, Steven. All I had to do today was come home, do the podcast, and then probably do a workout with my trainer because I obviously didn't do one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now I'm not doing one Thursday. And I have art class tonight, but I'm just like, my painting, I only need one more class to finish it, and there's 3 more, except I can only go to 1 more after this because of going to Paris soon. But I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I don't have anything to do at home, and then tomorrow you're going away, so I'll come home tomorrow and do stuff.
Dude, like I always say, just like I needed this video, I'd rather you stay somewhere and hang out with some friends and do your thing while we've got the ship still going. The train's still chugging along back here in Philly. So I'm proud of you for actually staying, for sticking around, because I actually was putting bets that I thought you were going to come home early, like Wednesday.
Who are you making bets with, Steven?
I told you. I'm like, I guarantee it'll be like Wednesday. Am I going to get a phone call like you're taking a red eye home Tuesday night?
No. Part of the reason I stayed, my buddy Stu Williams is in 3rd place right now. And he really wanted me to stay. Maybe he thinks I'm like a good luck charm or something, which doesn't exist because he still has to throw the fucking ball down the lane and get strikes.
Yeah, but Jared,
he's in 3rd place.
It's all in his head, though. You could be a good luck charm because he thinks you are.
Well, he texted me at 8:40 and I ignored it because I'm supposed to be on an airplane at 8 a.m. And when I went to bed at 1 last night, the bullshit. Anyway, before I talk about that bullshit, if it sounds a little different today, it's because I didn't travel with a microphone. I'm using the MacBook Pro audio, which actually they say has a really good microphone for recording. But nonetheless, if it sounds different, that's because I'm not at home and I think it's totally fine. But in the future, I'll travel with some sort of travel mic that works and will give us slightly better audio, but we'll see how this sounds because right now I'm on a shitty Wi-Fi connection in the hotel. Still have Zoom on so Steven can hear me and we can record with redundancy, but if it sounds different, that's why it sounds different, and I don't think it's going to matter much. You guys just want to listen. But on my desk, I set up pillows in front of me and to the left of me, so I've got pillows to try and absorb. Oh, and I also unplugged the refrigerator.
I like that you do all this audio acoustic setting stuff in your hotel room, but you don't do it at the factory besides turning off the air. Yeah, but you have a quality microphone that will actually pick up those things at the factory versus a laptop microphone. I mean, a laptop mic, I will say, I'm surprised at how it sounds. It actually sounds pretty good for a laptop microphone. It sounds much better than AirPods. I think AirPods are the worst when it comes to microphones. I think they're great for phone calls.
The pandemic brought out the okayness of having shitty AirPods audio on TV.
Yep.
And it's just like the proliferation of shitty audio was rife because it just was so bad how all these people sounded. They looked bad, they sounded bad, and everybody was like, oh, isn't this amazing? Through Zoom, we can have these calls. And then they probably didn't set up Zoom the way that you set up Zoom, and it sounded like shit balls.
Well, and there is actually a quality setting you can change in Zoom for like high quality musician setting where it actually gives you like the uncompressed, for the most part, it's not truly uncompressed audio instead of a super compressed like 24 kilohertz sample rate and all that shitty audio. So if you can tweak Zoom a little bit, you can really kind of make it work and almost record strictly through that.
What microphone do you think I should travel with in the future?
I mean, the broadcaster mic you can bring along, but I think...
How do I plug that in?
You would have to bring a Scarlett,
and then I have to bring a stand, and then I have to bring all that bullshit. Isn't there like a USB-C plug-in we could do?
Yeah, but you still need a stand of some sort. You can't just simply hold the microphone the entire podcast. But in terms of mics, Rode's got that new... They got the XDM 100 dynamic mic. It's a USB-C microphone. It might even double as an XLR input as well, but that is an end address microphone, just like the broadcaster ones that we have. So you would need an arm of some sort, which I know that's way too big to travel with. They do have the NT USB, which is actually the one that I used during the pandemic. I think I brought that home right before the pandemic, just in case we did any podcasting, and it worked out because I didn't have the Focusrite Scarlett or any type of interface to plug an XLR input in. And I think they just put out a new version that's USB-C of that. I think it's called the USB, let me see. Yeah, the USB Plus, Rode NT USB Plus. So that is a side address microphone. So it comes with a little desktop stand, and I think it also comes with like a metal pop filter. And it's going to be super portable because again, it's just a very small stand. The microphone's fairly flat, and you can probably just throw it in your travel bag.
Well, if I can just plug it in and use it, and it has one of those small stands that folds down, we should look into that. I'd pull up the internet right now, but I don't want to ruin our connection. So
yeah, you already broke up on me a couple times. So if this podcast is a little off, just know that we actually don't even have ourselves on the screen right now. Typically, me and Jared are looking at each other, so we know when to stop or start, or if one of us has a question. Or
I know, and I did that because I don't want him to. I don't want him to see the hookers in the bed right now. What's that?
All
hookers?
The blow on the bed.
What's that? You be quiet over there. So anyway, in Ohio, it's the Tournament of Champions for bowling. I came out this week. I've got the R8 with me, just still shooting some more with it. I actually love using it because it has a viewfinder. A lot of those other cameras that are geared towards just video have done away with the EVF, and I just feel...
Just a lot of the inexpensive cameras in general, like when you're talking sub $2,000 cameras, full frame, most of them don't have an EVF.
Doesn't the ZV-E10, the small Sony vlogging crop sensor camera, have one? Or doesn't have one?
I don't think it does. I thought those ZV series cameras, I didn't think they had a viewfinder. I know the A7C has a viewfinder, but it's a very small viewfinder from like the A606000 series cameras.
Oh, that thing sucks.
It's really, really tiny. Now, don't get me wrong, the R8 is a tiny viewfinder, but for some reason, it doesn't look that bad. The only viewfinder that Canon had that I didn't like was the R10. That's a really small viewfinder.
Yeah, but I will say, shooting video, I'm watching the people out here, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, the vloggers out here. No one looks through the camera. No one has any sort of real stabilization whatsoever. And I just feel that, for me, shooting video through the camera is just so much better, so much more stable, and just easier to do. And the R8, being able to shoot stills, I pumped it to 10,000 ISO. I guess I'm going to do that for my review to see how the photos end up looking, to see at 10,000. But everything looks great. And yes, I'm putting a 28 to 70. I brought two lenses, 28 to 70 f2 and 135 1.8. That's what I brought. I didn't bring anything else because I'm not out here really to do too much. So I just wanted to come out and shoot a little and hang out with the guys. and root them on. I mean, it's a big tournament. It's the winner gets 100,000, second place gets 50,000.
Wow.
Stu is sitting in third place right now. They start up at 10 a.m. today, and I'm going to go over there and surprise them that I'm there, and they're going to be like, "You fucking wanker." That's what Don Barrett, he's British. He's going to be like, "You fucking stayed, you fuck. I didn't know you were going to stay." Because he was drunk last night telling me, because he failed out. He didn't make the cut.
That sucks.
But so the reason I like being out here with these guys is they've all become my friends, this clique of bowlers, and we're all around the same age, but they just make fun of me, right? Because anybody that has ever
just
been
like
around,
you're at the factory,
basically anybody that's been around like athletes or just friends, they bust your balls, and a friend can bust your balls, and these guys bust my balls nonstop, and that's better than the people trying to kiss my ass all the time, like, "Oh, I love your work," and fanning out. These guys, they just wish they had 1 million subscribers. They're constantly going, "Oh, are you at 1.5 yet? Are you at 1.5? No.
Are you wearing your chain around your chest and a giant, 1 million subscriber plaque? The one you bring around all the time.
Yeah, I put it through. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna have to scan this. This is gonna set off the alarm here. The security alarm. You need to put this through." And I did. And they're like, "Is this real?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You want to touch me?" They're like, "Yeah, we got to pat you down now." And so then I haven't gotten pat down, knock on wood, since the TSA pre-check thing for a while, which is much better. Pre-check out of Philly is great. Sometimes I'm through in like 2 minutes. I get out of the car, I walk over to the pre-check gate, which is just pre-check, and within minutes you're through and on your way, which is always nice.
Pre-check is the best thing unless you're traveling with someone that doesn't have pre-check, which is usually me every time, because my wife doesn't have pre-check, but I did sign her up to get pre-check, so she should have it soon. Now,
wait, do babies fly free?
I think under 2 they fly free, if I recall.
I don't think they fly free. They need a chair. They need a seat. Unless
newborns.
they can be in your arms. No, newborns are different.
Yeah.
But 2 years old they're getting a fucking seat at 2 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I obviously haven't looked it up just yet. But I know at least newborns and very tiny toddlers can fly free. I forget what if it's an age thing or a size thing, or I don't know.
Oh, well, geez. We know what your baby's going to be like.
What are you trying to say? 30-pound baby.
You're going to have pudgy rolls. The baby's going to be like 9.7
Drenched
pounds.
in sweat.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, it's going to be amniotic fluid or whatever the hell they call it. Yes, this is an anatomically correct podcast, everybody.
Oh,
anyway, I decided to stay out here because I want to root them on. I'll fly home tomorrow on Friday. It's not like I had anything to do at home. And yes, that sounds depressing because it is, but it's kind of true. The only thing is there is my cat, and I can, do my workout. I'll make up a workout maybe on the weekend, whatever. It's no big deal. And the art class is fine. I did whatever. Dude, the worst was trying to change my flight. I can't change it online. And so they're like, call. So this is at 11 o'clock at night. I call, and it's like, would you like call times are long. We can save your place in line and call you back in 58 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, my flight was supposed to be at 8 a.m., which means I was leaving here around 5:30 in the morning. And so the call finally comes in at like 12:45, wakes me up because I went to sleep. Wakes me up inside, save me. Because I didn't know if I was gonna change my flight at that point. When they called and they're like, it's $49 to change your flight. So I did, and then I changed my car rental. Then I got an extra night at the hotel. Yeah, so I'll be flying home in the afternoon tomorrow, so I don't have to rush, take an 8 a.m. flight. I can take the 11:20 a.m. flight and then just get home and do whatever.
The one thing I really hate about changing a flight and, you get credited towards like a future flight, why can't they just roll that credit into the new flight that you're getting if it costs, say, a little more? Now, I get, obviously, if it's a cheaper flight or something like that, but what if I'm changing flights and it costs a little more? Can't you just roll it in? Every time they're like, oh, we'll credit you for a future flight. No, I want to use it right now. Like, why can't I? It's such a pain in the ass.
Fuck you.
This is American Airlines, but, they definitely want to do that. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
That's what they do. They try to make, we're making it easy. Like, no, you're not actually making it easy.
So I want to circle back real quick about you talking about shooting, that you prefer shooting like video through the EVF with, say, the R8. Do you tend to use the flip screen at all, or you only use the EVF? Because I understand why you want to use the EVF for stability, but obviously if you're running and gunning with video, you really can't, especially if you're using like a gimbal or something like that. So I do get why other people aren't using the EVF that are there, especially if they have it on like a Joby arm or something weird.
Well, they don't even do that. They don't even do that. One of them, Belmo, has a person out filming his vlogs, and now he just started doing that. And she's on a gimbal, a stabilizer, an actual gimbal, which is fine. But the reason, I will flip the screen out from time to time, but I just feel that it's much more difficult for me to see the settings because I'm fucking blind. And so it's harder for me to see the numbers. And that's a personal thing. But also I don't feel it's stable. Anytime I move it off to the side, I feel a little more bouncy.
It's definitely less stable, R8. For sure, yeah.
Well, and the R8 doesn't have image stabilization.
Are you using an IS lens or no?
I don't think the 28-70 has IS.
Ooh, so that's going to be shaky as fuck.
Nah, it looks fine, dude. It looks fine.
Yeah, but it looks fine until you blow it up on a 4K monitor.
Well, we'll take a look at it. Yeah. We'll take a look. But really, I'm just shooting just to shoot, and I gave some footage to Belmo for his vlog that I got that she didn't have.
If I'm ever in a pinch like that, and I have no IS at all in the lens or the actual sensor, I will just put on electronic stabilization for that. Put it on not the enhanced mode, but the regular mode. It crops in a little bit. It's like 5%, if that. But it is pretty good with at least like those micro jitters that you get. It'll at least cut those out. That's why I still prefer having some sort of stabilization. Or worst comes to worst, you throw it in warp stabilizer and post in something like Premiere Pro. But if you have a really long clip, warp stabilizer doesn't do the best job.
That brings up. What was it? Sunday, I posted the Canon R8 AF video.
Yes.
That was me showing actual clips of the R8 in use. Now, look, I'm bringing up the R8 because honestly, we don't have we do have stuff to talk about, but I thought this was important because there were a lot of comments on this video about certain things. So to fill you in, the R8 AF video, I took it out to the Harlem Globetrotters. I took it out to women's lacrosse. And then even after the fact, I also went and shot men's lacrosse last weekend, followed by in the same night or at night later, I shot the Philadelphia Union, which was professional soccer using adapted 11 or 12-year-old lenses and the autofocus in these cameras. And the reason I made the video the way I made it is so I wanted the footage to talk for itself. I didn't want to sit there and hammer you over the head and be like, isn't this so amazing? Well, I mean, I say that it's amazing, but I want you to see it. I want you to see the results. I want you to see it in action. And then I want to have you see the final pictures in Lightroom and you can make your mind up. But the comment section lit up with a bunch of stuff. There was good, there was bad, and of course there was the you're an asshole thing. But the good stuff was like, I have a Z9 and this looks like it's better than my Z9. And I'm not sitting here saying like, yes, I am actually sitting here saying that the R8 has better autofocus than the Z9 at this point because
here we go.
It does. But it's true, Steven. And people need to, why don't I, while I'm at it, tell you that the R8 also has better autofocus than the A1 and better autofocus than the A9 and the A9 II. So I'm going that far.
I do think the A7R5 is pretty much caught up to what Canon did with the R3 when they first implemented their new dual pixel AF2 or whatever. The one where it has like the torso and the head detection.
Yeah.
Because what I really liked that you showcased in that video was when the Globetrotters were like doing their spin moves and stuff, it would be on their eye, then it would go to their head, then their eye, they would do like a flip, it would still track their head. I think that Canon does do a really good job without automatically hunting to the background. Like I said, it tracks the head, the torso. It just knows that in general, there's a human being right there and it knows to track that subject. Same with the A7R5 with that new AI processing chip, whatever it's called. But I think the A1, since it doesn't have that chip, it's still a little behind, but it's still amazing autofocus. Don't get me wrong. It just goes to show how great the R8 is for $1,500 freaking dollars.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound like an infomercial here too. Like we use other cameras and stuff. It's just the R8 really is an incredible camera for that price.
Well, and what you just said there is like, this is not an infomercial. We're not paid by Canon to say this stuff. It's the fact that I've picked up this camera and I'm not going on shoots being like, man, my R3 is just so much better than this. I really wish I used my R3. And I'm saying that about a $1,500 camera. That part of it is the autofocus feels like it's just as good as the R3. I don't miss. The only times I miss is if in the viewfinder it's completely out of focus because I wasn't tracking properly and I'm just out and I'm pressing the shutter button even though it's out of focus. That's my fault. There's very few times where the only times I've seen slight misses is if I'm late to moving to where the subject is myself. Yeah. If they're just coming into the frame and it acquires it. But there was one I posted on Instagram with the guy going to the net, the lacrosse guy. He's shooting towards the goalie and the ball's behind him. The ball actually doesn't go in. It hits the post, but it looks like it goes in. I'm shooting at 40 frames a second and the first couple are out, but then the one that I posted obviously is in. So it did fully acquire. I was late to the move, but that's the point of being able to shoot 40 and to have the focus be so fast is that when it nails, it nails. Like it's in and you get a whole bunch of shots. And so even if you miss the first 5 or 6 because of whatever reason, that's only a fraction of a second. And you end up getting it. The thing about it is that the R3 gives me 30 frames a second and the R8 gives me 40 frames a second. And no, it's not stacked, but I'm getting other images that I'm not getting with my R3, which is just insane.
Did you shoot the entire lacrosse game with the electronic shutter, like 40 frames per second across the board? Every single shot?
Entire game.
Wow. Because I will say there really wasn't much when it came to the jelloing effect, when it came to rolling shutter. Your posts look pretty straight, and I'm sure you were whipping that camera around tracking these players.
That was the same thing when in that R8 AF video, when you see the Globetrotters coming towards you or going away from you, or when I'm horizontally inclined to the lacrosse women running down the field. That's where you would see the jelloing in the background, like the Sony, but you don't. Yeah,
it's more the straight lines I'm talking about, like, the fences and stuff like that, or the actual post. That stuff, usually you'll start to see some kind of bowing, especially when you're doing a quick whip pan or really tracking a player going left or right or something like that. Like we've noticed with the Sony cameras, if it's not a stacked sensor, they have terrible readout speed. They're very, very, especially the A7R5 and 4. If you're shooting electronic shutter, which that camera, again, it's not meant to shoot electronic shutter at all, and it's 61 megapixels, I get it, but you'll get some insane rolling shutter. If you're just doing even a slow, pan left or right, you're going to start to get some crazy warping of those straight lines.
And the other comments in the comment section that come from people are, good luck putting glass on it. It's such a cheap camera, but you're going to spend all your money on lenses. And it's like, I get the third party discussion.
It's valid.
I also understand. Yeah. Well, sure, that is valid right now. Canon has also said that they plan on putting out 7 to 8 lenses a year until they're up to like 70. So they plan on getting the lesser expensive lenses up there. And I do think at some point they will give you the third party, which we've already talked about in detail. And I get it. Like that's an actual thing, right? That's a thing that people talk about. But when you look at the RF glass right now, from a pro standpoint, and you're going to sit here and tell me that it's more expensive than a Sony or a Nikon, you're just wrong. Because if you look up the pricing of a 50 1.2 across the board, the Sony's $1999, so it's $2,000. The Nikon is $2,100. The Canon is $2,100. The 70 to 200s are like $2,800 for the Canon and the Nikon, and $2,700 for the Sony. And the 24 to 70s, the same thing. The pricing is going to be basically the same for the Pro glass, but the one commenter was like, well, you save all this money on a body, but you're going to spend it all on lenses. It's like, well, I just saved $4,500 by getting an R8 that focuses better. And no, it doesn't have the same features as a Z9, but it's also $4,500 cheaper. You have $4,500 to play with at this point that you don't have with the Nikon. Because if you spend $5,500 for a Nikon Z9, you're all of a sudden having to spend a shit ton of money on glass anyway.
Yeah, and I do get your argument about the glass being all the same pricing when it comes to the more expensive, L lineup and the Pro glass. They're pretty much across the board the same exact pricing, maybe $100 or $200 difference. But the issue here, in my opinion, is, again, Sony and Nikon have the option to get third-party glass, because I I do think most people buying an R8 are not going to be putting on a $2,000 L lens or multiple L lenses. Maybe they'll have enough to get one, but I do think with a Sony, you could buy a $1,000 or $700 Tamron lens, or a Sigma Art lens for much, much less instead of buying the 51.2 GM lens. So they do have that over Canon, and you can adapt older Tamron and third-party lenses, but I'm sure the focusing is not up to par or not up to date with current RF lenses and stuff like that. So I think you'll see some focusing issues in the end. And the glass in general is just not nearly as sharp as today's glass. We've noticed that just reviewing old third-party lenses back in the day.
I used the 70-200 Sigma when the R6 came out and didn't miss a beat with that. And that's a cheap lens, and that was adapted. I'm not sitting here to defend Canon. They need to do it. They need to bring out the third party for these people.
Yep.
There's also, there are the 24-105 f4. You can get into these lenses. Now, those are going to focus great, and they will come out with other glass. But yes, this is still a problem that there is no third-party option at this point, and we've talked about that and beat that horse. But today on the market, if I was to pick a camera, a system, I'm personally, as a professional, going in this direction. I can't recommend going in Nikon direction, and Sony, I still think is having issues right now, but they do have all that glass. If I we just did we do the R8 versus R6 Mark II versus A7 IV?
We did, yes. It's being edited
it's the A7
currently.
IV. Right, that's the current one, and I sit here and I'm like, well, the A7 IV shoots 10 frames a second, and then when you go into, at most 10 frames a second. 6 frames, and that's 6 frames with the electronic shutter. You're doing 40 with the R8 and the R6 Mark II. So, and the autofocus is better. And because that new Sony doesn't have the new chip in it, the new AI processor. So in the current world right now, for the next couple of years, it just feels like Canon is the it. And it ebbs and flows. Maybe Nikon comes out with something like the R8 that does something more. I don't think that it will. I think they'll come out with the Z8, but I don't think it's going to be better than a Z9. And we know how the Z9 is.
Like I said a few podcasts ago, I do think it will be Nikon's year just because they do have all of the glass finally. They're really killing it in the glass game. They put out a bunch of great lenses over the past few months, and really all they need is one body to bring them up to par with the other two. But like you said, I don't know if Z8's going to be it, but who knows? Maybe it will be. Maybe it'll be their holy grail. I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem is, once again, so they come out with a cool camera. How many people jumped ship 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago? How many people already jumped ship and left?
I think of, look what Canon did. Canon was in the same boat a few years ago with like the 5D Mark IV era. They were way behind Nikon and Sony. A lot of Canon users, I'm sure, jumped ship to like Sony. I was about to jump ship, and then they came out with the R system, and actually the EOS R wasn't great. The RP wasn't great. It was not until the R5, R6. That's when they brought it all back and turned everything around. So they went through that. I think Nikon can do that as well.
Let's put this discussion of the R8 AF video. The whole point of that was just to show people how it works. Take a look and get a feeling for yourself. And I do the same thing with other cameras. And it's not like we just show it always being in focus. You see where it loses, but then you bring it back and you still have it.
And I just want to reiterate that I'm not giving up fully on Nikon. I still think, at least they showed hope with the Z9 and all the current lenses. So I think they still have a pretty damn good chance to come back and who knows, maybe they'll be on top in a year or two, but the way Canon's chugging along, it's kind of doubtful. The only thing I don't like about Canon right now is they're putting out a ton of bodies, and they're starting to get to the point where it's like GoPro and they have too many models. Same with Sony, kind of, but Nikon's on the complete opposite end where they're not putting out nearly enough bodies. Okay,
let's talk about Meta doing away with Reels. I talked about this on the Photo News Fix this week. Meta doing away with bonuses. Which is for Reels, and
this includes Instagram, right?
This is Instagram and Facebook, because they started to you would upload your Reels to Instagram and then they'd go to Facebook, and they just try to double dip, right? They try to get it all.
Yep.
They try to get as much reach as they can. The stupid thing is when you would get this Reels bonus opportunity, it's like, we will pay you $8,000 this month.
It's like
if you
up
get
to $8,500 or something, right? Yeah.
Well, it's like, you got to get 8 million views. I'm like, dude. You can't get, even if you do get 8 million views, you're only paying me $8,500 or $8,000. That money on YouTube, if you had 8 million, 9 million, 10 million views on YouTube on your channel in a month, you're bringing in 40, 50, 60, 70, $80,000 depending on your CPM. And they just can't compete. And that's why they dropped it. And I also don't know how shorts are going to work. I showed it on the video that we made like a couple dollars on the impossible shot video, and yeah, it already had 1 million views before the monetization kicked in.
I think we made about $50, right? Something like that.
It was $50 total dollars. It did like $51 total, and it did like $41 before monetization was even available. I don't even know how they figured that out in the first place.
Yeah.
So I will reiterate once again that I think Reels and Shorts are false numbers. They are actual numbers, but I think they don't give you the fan base that you want. Very few people have been able to turn a Reels and Shorts career transition it into long form, which some have. There's some comedy channels that have, because most people are following mindlessly, swiping through their phone, kind of like your wife, and just going and going for hours looking at TikTok. And it's just mindless dribble for the most part.
It's scary.
But it is super addicting. That's why I deleted TikTok, not just because of the China owned and all of that, but more so that it sucks you in. And that's the other problem is my friend is at this thing called Social Media World or Marketing event in San Diego where I probably should have gone there to find a wife or something, but I'm here. She's like, I invited you. I'm like, oh, okay, I forgot. So there's a couple people speaking at the event. One of them is this kid, Think Media. And if you look up Think Media on YouTube, he really tried to go the photo route and review vlogging gear. And it's always, in this video, I'm going to give you the 5 reasons that you need a good microphone.
This fix is brought to you by... I had to say it.
You look at, I don't do that in every video, but you look at the video views and they're really shitty. And he's got like over 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and that's more than us. And it's not me being jealous that he has 2 million, because I know how he got the 2 million. He ran paid advertisements to try and get people into the ecosystem, because what does he do? He sells a course on how to make it on YouTube. And so here's someone who made YouTube bigger by paying for ads to get subscribers who don't translate to actual viewers, to then harvest the emails, to then market to them his course, to sell them on how to be successful on YouTube. And I despise those how to be successful on YouTube courses. I really do. The funny thing is, I saw Mr. Beast talking about this, that there's people that sell these courses, and he's like, I've made tons of content on podcasts that you could just go listen to, who just tells you what you need to do, because it's not a secret, and you don't need these people telling you how to build a fucking YouTube channel, because they don't know shit. And yeah, they know stuff, and they can give you looks at your analytics, and they can give you guidance, and they can help you. But the majority of the people out there, like the Think Media, I'm sure he's giving you good content and good strategy for building a strategy to get your YouTube channel going, but it's not going to be mind-blowingly helpful, in my opinion.
The irony about those channels that, they're selling these courses that they want to, how to make it on YouTube, stuff like that. Meanwhile, they have maybe 100,000 subscribers. Each video gets 2,000 views, 3,000 views. They're barely making it themselves on YouTube, yet they're selling these courses. I just find that very ironic.
That's all you need to look at. You just need to look at the views.
And at the end of the day, it comes down to putting in the work and being consistent. Like I've always said, especially with this podcast too, being consistent. Because there was a point today where I'm like, let's just can the podcast for the week. And you're like, no, we got to do it. And after I got the call, and I'm like, you're right. We should try and push through and do it, even though it might sound a little different. I can't see you, so it's a little off, and you're breaking up a lot on my end. People won't hear that in the podcast, but on the Zoom call, there's a lot of breaking up going on, so it's a little hard for me to respond. But we're pushing through and making it happen, and I think a lot of people would have given up. Same thing with that first year of YouTube. I think a lot of people don't see big numbers and they give up right away, but it takes years and years of hard work to really fully make it. I mean, even look at Mr. Beast. It took him how many years to where he's at now?
Right. And the thing with not wanting to can the podcast, well, one of the reasons, so I actually forgot about the whole Zoom thing and the shitty internet connection here at this end of the hotel. And yes, I could use 5G if I actually had a good 5G connection in here.
And that's the issue real quick is that, that last resort was like, let's just tether your phone and go off the cell service, but you don't have good 5G. The Wi-Fi is shitty. So we took off at least the video conference part of the Zoom call. So we're just strictly going off audio, and you're breaking up a ton on my end. So it's very tough to make it through the podcast, but we're still trying to make it through and do our thing.
Well, the reason I wanted to do it is because I hate when I go to listen to a podcast and it's when it's supposed to come out and there's nothing there. And
I
they
do too.
missed. I get that there's reasons sometimes, right? There's personal reasons and things happen. But for me, I feel that it's a commitment to the people that are listening or that enjoy this week in and week out. They find that there's value in what we do, or it gives them comfort to know that we're there every week. It's not that hard for us to take an hour me to take an hour to record this, and it takes you a bunch of hours after the fact to edit. But I look at it as a commitment to the viewers or to the listeners to not let them down by skipping weeks just because. And I'm not saying that's what we're thinking of doing, but on occasion there's a reason you do. But we should be able to carve out time to at the very least do a 30-minute, 40-minute podcast, and maybe not the hour or hour and 30 like last week. And it's just to me, it's important because the last thing is, like, I listened to this podcast called Heavyweight, and yes, it's a much heavier lift for them to get those stories. I really recommend you go listen to the entire series of Heavyweight. Just skip the ones during the pandemic because I hate that bullshit, the whole pandemic stuff. But it's such a great podcast, but there's only like 5 or 6 episodes in a season, and then they take like a year and a half off because they have to make the new content because it's not easy. For what we do, we talk about the photography industry.
Topical.
We talk about, right. I don't know what our text number is because I'm not at home. It's 313 something, 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 something. So you could text us. Like I said, it's a commitment, and I feel bad. I guess you have OCD more than me. And
Severe OCD, yes.
I just don't like missing. I don't know. So wait, I had FOMO. Like I was all ready to go home. And I was prepared to go home. And then it's just like, well, painting class. I'm like, okay, do I need to? Yeah, I paid for painting class, but is that why I need to go home instead of rooting on my friend who's starting in a few minutes on the next set of games? And I hope he does really well.
Which
and
is much more important.
I'm going to surprise him.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe he'll be happy. Maybe
you're his good luck charm, man. You got to stick around.
Yeah, but they're my friends, and I want to root them on, and I wanted to do it from here and not sitting at home because I know I would have gotten home right now. I would have landed already because the flight was 8 a.m. and I would have landed by 9:20, and then I would have gotten back to the house and then drove over, and then we would have started this around 11, and then I would have been hangry, and then I would have been done and sitting there going, well, I got nothing till 6:30 when I got my art class. I guess I could work out from 4:30 to 5:30. You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah, because last week before you went away, we tried to film a bunch of stuff, cram in the entire week of filming and get videos ready and queued up to be edited this week while you were gone. So there's really nothing for you to do this week, like you said. And Friday, especially, I'm going to be gone for the day. I'm going to Boston, St. Patty's Day. Actually, that'll be interesting.
You're shipping out to Boston.
I'm shipping up to Boston. Isn't that how it goes?
Up to Boston.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So, yeah, I mean, we did everything last week to prepare for this week so you can take your time and be there and enjoy it and support your friends. And then back to the whole conversation about, skipping the podcast. And I also don't want to let people down because I do truly think that people that listen to this specific podcast are the hardcore fans, the hardcore fan base that they want to hear every little thing we want to talk about. They want to be up to date with the photo news, the industry, all of that. And I really don't want to let those...
But they're also interested in us.
Yeah, of course. And I don't want to let those people down.
No, I totally agree. And that's why we do this. I mean, that's why we have a commitment to this. And that's why we started it 42 weeks ago. We just started it up again, trying not to make it such a heavy lift. Because when it becomes such a heavy lift is when I get overwhelmed and I'm like, this is taking us away.
And right now it's about half a day, from preparation to recording to editing to uploading. I'd say about half a day, maybe 6 hours, give or take, depending on the episode. Obviously, if I have to insert a lot of stuff or do a ton of editing, this one might be a little different because, like I said, you were cutting out a lot, so there's gonna be a lot of cutting around things. These are things that people don't hear ever, you know, us cutting around the ums and the uhs and the dead air and that kind of stuff, or, you know, if your dad calls or something like that. I try to cut around those types of things and give you a polished product at the end of the day, just to make it an easy listen. I think a lot of people assume this is a straight through podcast and we don't stop at all, but that's definitely not the case.
Well, you know which podcasts go straight through and they sound like shit. I mean, our old podcast, when we did it live, was not as polished as it was when we did it when it was edited.
Well, we also did a lot of pre-production though too. Remember, I would have slides made up. I had my entire script for the news. I mean, there was a lot of pre-production to make sure we didn't mess up that much. But yeah, there was definitely still mess ups for sure. It's live.
Yeah. Some of the, like, I listen to Pivot, and you can hear when they cut things, and sometimes they do a really bad job of cutting around because they repeat themselves. You always say this, like, they make a statement and then they cut around something and then they make the same statement again because someone didn't go in and edit it properly.
And don't get me wrong, there's definitely times, even with this podcast, that one of us will pick up at the wrong place and say the wrong thing or something like that, and it just won't make for a great cut or edit. So there's definitely parts where you can kind of hear it if you're really listening. So I'm not going to say this is a perfectly edited podcast, but for the most part, I try to always listen back to the final edited podcast to make sure it's pretty seamless across the board, because I think most people do not listen back to their final edited podcast, and it shows.
Let's switch gears into this Samsung denies the moon photo is a fake. MKBHD put out a video on this. If you want to go watch that, I highly recommend you go watch his. I don't want to go too deep into this. The moral of the story in this one is that Samsung's latest, like, S20 something has this 100x zoom, and it's basically for taking pictures of the moon. And someone did a test where they took an out of focus picture of the moon. They then took a picture of a screen, and it ended up looking almost like a perfect shot of the moon. And so their idea was that Samsung is actually doing an overlay of a picture of the moon to make your moon look stable and to make it look perfect. Now, Samsung denies this and says something about technology that they use, but it does really look like they are using an overlay. And the reason this can work is because the moon is locked in step with Earth in the rotation. So you're always going to see the same moon no matter where you are, just like Feibel, when Feibel said somewhere out there.
Yeah, but you're not always going to see a full moon, right?
Beneath the pale moonlight. Man, if that song doesn't make you cry, have you ever seen Feibel?
Of course.
But the original where he's singing and the parents are looking at the moon and he's looking at the same moon and he's gonna cry.
Yeah,
that is such a great song. Is that Peebo Bryson and whatever?
I don't know.
What a good song. Yeah, no, it's not always gonna be a full moon, but maybe it uses other
but I also think, I guess most people aren't taking photos of the moon unless it's a full moon, right? I feel like that's when people take a photo.
Hey, look at the full moon, guys. I'm shooting with my iPhone. It looks like a blurry mess.
Well, it was like the other day. It was like the winter full moon or something, and it was huge in the sky. I don't know if you saw it.
No.
It was like a week ago. Like, I had my family text blowing up, like, did you guys see the moon tonight? So I think that's when people are taking photos, when it's a big, giant full moon.
That's why I don't ever take pictures of the moon, really, because it's the same moon that everybody else gets to see. It's like, cool. Picture of the moon, guys.
Yeah, I've done it once. Actually, no, twice. We did the... What is that?
The Nikon.
What was that Nikon camera? The P3000?
P600?
No, I thought it was like the
P600.
I thought it was like a 3000 or 1000, like 1000.
Well, no? It's a big zoom. I thought it was the P600. You look it up. You've got better internet than me, and I don't want to ruin the internet here. What is the Nikon camera that had it's the P600, dude. I'm telling you. I'm going to stake a claim right now. I'm going to bet you $1.
It is definitely not the P600, I'll tell you that.
No, it's the P600.
Nikon Coolpix P1000. Yeah.
I told you it's the P600.
Not the P600.
There had to be a P600.
I will say, that camera, as shitty and laggy as it was, because it's a very cheap camera, the zoom is incredible. I mean, I zoomed in
Saturn
all the way on the moon. Yeah, and you saw Saturn too. And it looked great. But the stability, the menu, all of that, it was just terrible. But again, if you're doing Astro, I guess it's kind of cool.
I took that to the Phillies game and made a really cool video out of it.
Yeah.
that was actually pretty cool. It's like a cell phone size sensor, but it still worked out.
Back to the conversation about the Samsung phone, clearly computational photography was giving it more detail than it really had in the first place.
And the convergence of computational and multi-frames, like even taking 40 frames a second and whatever the R1's going to end up doing, it's going to be a new way of photography. I think the R1 is going to have pre-shooting and maybe post-shooting. And even if I just have a half a second of it shooting while I'm autofocusing on the subject and I'm halfway holding the button down, if it's recording RAW files at that point, like the Nikon does, but for JPEG right now, that is going to be a major, major game changer for me and for everybody else in plucking out the images. But that still means you still need proper composition. You still need to know what you're doing. You still need to know the proper exposure. You still need to know where action's going to happen in order to capture it. So it doesn't make you a better photographer having all this tech if you still suck.
I think 2024 is going to be a very interesting year for photography, though, because we're going to have pretty much all of the new flagships. And we already saw what the A1 gave us. I mean, that was mind-blowing back then, and it still really holds up today. We're going to have the A1 II, most likely. The R1, they already pretty much confirmed. And then who knows, maybe a Z9 II, although I think it might be still a little early for that. But Nikon might be back in the game fully, and you never know. They might pull an A1. Who knows?
I do have a correction from something I said in Photo News Fix maybe 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about the A1 getting a firmware update to update it to the similar autofocus as the A7R5. Mm-hmm. And I was wrong there because the A7R5 has the new AI chip, focusing chip in the camera, and the A1 doesn't. So no firmware is going to update the Sony A1 to get the same autofocus capabilities as the new one with the sensor. And it's not a torpedo at Nikon. That's a torpedo at Nikon, because all the people are like, well, firmware is going to fix my Z9. Firmware is going to fix my Z6. Firmware is going to fix my Z7. Firmware is not fixing the A1.
We were told specifically by Nikon engineers when they came and showed us the Z9 that was completely a hardware thing, that a firmware update can't simply give that Z9 focusing system to the Z6 II, Z7 II,
but
and
no
all
one
that.
believes us.
We heard
no
it straight
listens.
from the engineers themselves. They specifically
What'd
said...
that sound like?
They specifically said that the Nikon XPeed 7 processor was like their Digic X, and that's why this focusing system is that much better because of that. Now, I do find it funny that Sony needs a completely dedicated separate, processor, the AI chip or whatever, to do this new focusing, because their Bions XR, I guess, is just not powerful enough, where you have something like Canon, who has a Digic X, just one single processor, no dedicated chip, and it still runs circles around Sony.
Yep. The last thing I want to talk about before I get over to the bowling center, because I want to get over there, even though I already packed my bags, I got to repack into my backpack. There are so many people in the bowling world that every bowler, not every, but a ton of them have their own camera that they have for filming themselves to make content, or they have a person with them, like Brad and Kyle, who are one of the earlier ones to start doing. They're the ones who got me interested in coming out on tour, because I saw the behind the scenes.
They're like the OGs.
Yeah, they have a kid named Dennis who does their filming without a stabilizer with a Sony camera and doesn't get his fucking lines right. I actually have to put that Insta story up because I'm like, Dennis, you gonna get your lines straight today? Because your lines weren't straight in the vlog. It looks like the bowling center is running downhill. He's like, I don't care.
I saw him filming one of them, Brad or Kyle, I forget which one's which, and he had he was like holding the camera like above his shoulders, like filming him, which I thought was odd because the microphone was basically like above the guy's head, pointed above the guy's head, the shotgun.
Steven, these guys aren't filmmakers. They just take video and
hey,
vlogs.
It's all about the content at the end of the day for vlogs. It really doesn't matter about you could do it on a phone and I'll watch if it's good content. If you're into bowling, who cares what it looks like?
It still needs to sound good. There's this
sound is
girl
big.
Out,
yeah, I agree.
There's this bowler. She's 13. Her name's Bella Love Castillo, and somebody has probably seen her videos of her. She's a two-handed bowler, and she's very good for 13. She went on the women's tour and bowled an event and finished second. She almost won the whole event, beating everybody else. I don't know if that's a slap at the female bowlers or not, but she's very good. And so she blew up on Instagram real fast, and it actually slowed down. I actually had like a 30-minute conversation with her dad last night about some feedback. I'm like, can I give you feedback? Because now they're vlogging on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, can I give you some feedback about the edit? And I'm not an editor extraordinaire, but he's like, I'll talk to her. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Bella, when you are talking, you need to lower the background volume of the music that you overlaid over the entire video, because I can't hear you talk if you have that background audio and you didn't bring those levels down to then compensate for your audio. And she was like, meh, I just did it fast. I didn't feel like editing. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, that's a 13-year-old talking, because she actually does the edits, and she's going to get tired of doing the edits soon. And I'm like, you need to learn, Dad. You need to learn to do this editing stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to send you my video guides, and so you can actually learn.
I do think that's the one major mistake that new YouTubers make. The background audio is always way too high. One, I think because they're either editing without headphones, or two, I've even seen new YouTubers edit on like a phone. So I think they're just playing it back through speakers, and the background audio usually doesn't sound that bad or high on speakers, but the second you put in like AirPods or headphones, it's way too high. And back, a few years ago, I remember Dan used to kind of fight us on that. Like, he wouldn't really wear headphones, and he would just listen to the speakers and be like, it sounds fine. And then I would put headphones on, and it would be way too loud.
Or he had one headphone on and one headphone off.
Exactly. And his argument was kind of like, not many people wear headphones. But I think this day and age, I'm glad we always kind of did a middle of the range mix where we would kind of make it a little loud in the headphones, but not that loud in the speaker, or vice versa, and kind of have a nice middle of the road mix where you can still hear the background audio, but it's not distracting. But I'm glad I would always follow that rule, because this day and age, how many people are watching videos with AirPods on, and you can really hear the background audio and it drowns out the voice. Also, we throw on a parametric equalizer on our background audio now, which basically carves out the middle frequency of that music. And you can easily hear you, even if the background track's a little loud, because again, it's carved out in the middle. So, but that's not something I would recommend for newbies.
No. So out here, Darren Tang, he's another guy that makes YouTube videos about bowling, and he does really well on his YouTube, 50, 60,000 views per video, which is great. He has a full-time shooter. I think he has 2 shooters now and an editor, and they come with him because he's making money. I looked at some of their CPMs. This is getting into YouTube talk numbers. Their CPM for one of them is almost double ours. They were at $22 per 1,000 views, and I'm at $12.66.
Wow.
And it's insane because we get more views but make less money. And that's nothing we can control with ads running, but their CPMs are higher in the bowling world, which is actually good. So if they can pump up the views, they can actually make more money out on YouTube than on the road. You also have Packy and the House with the House Bowling channel. They do a great job. So what I like about what I was going to say is, they need to not do the same thing, because bowling on the road, everything becomes
repetitive.
It's just a bunch of shots of bowlers throwing balls, and then they come in and they talk a little bit.
It needs to be about the behind the scenes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they do that, but that also can get boring too because it's repetitive. But what I like what Packy does is I drilled a bowling ball with 5 finger holes, and I put all 5 fingers in the ball to bowl. Normally you have 3 holes or 2 for two-handed bowlers, but he did that. He did the heaviest bowling ball. He made it like 23 pounds, which is insane.
Very unique content, yeah.
Right, so he's doing like these what will happen if I do this?
It's almost like Mr. Beast style for the bowling community.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting to see what he's doing.
And I like to see, like, what do you do on your off days? I want to see them go to like a theme park or something like that and just have fun. I don't need to see bowling content over and over and over again unless it's like a tournament of some sort.
Right. And the other issue that they have is if they're not bowling well, they might be pissed off and not want to talk to the camera.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's that too.
And it's got to be hard to perform on camera at the same time as trying to get your head around, like, I'm in the game right now, I'm bowling. I'm sure that's tough. It takes you out, I bet.
It can. I want to get out of here, Steven. I want to get over to the bowling center because it already started and I want to go root him on. That's why I stayed. We did aim to get it done sooner, but we had to deal with the audio thing to figure out how we were going to do it. So.
Yeah, it's a little tough this week, like I said, and the audio is not going to sound as good as normal, but we'll be back next week with everything back to normal.
Yep, well, at least that's the plan. The text number's down below, and
I got it. It's 313-710-9729. 313-710-9729.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode that we did one because that's our plan. We don't want to miss them. So thank you, Steven. I'm going to get this saved up and figure out how I'm going to transfer it to you.
Hopefully it edits fine. We'll see.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Jared Polin, FronosPhoto.com. See ya.
Bye.